Hello, everyone, and welcome to our special panel, Anthropomorphism in Children's Books. This program is brought to you in partnership with the Ohioana Library and the 2022 Ohioana Book Festival. The festival is a 3-day virtual weekend of literary fun taking place April 29th through May 1st, and tonight is one of the kickoff events. I am Kathryn Powers, and I'm wearing 2 hats this evening. My first is that I'm the regional advisor for the Central and Southern Ohio chapter of the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, which is a very long name, so we shorten that happily to SCBWI. And even then, that's kind of hard to say too. But my hat number 2 is that I am also the assistant director of the Ohioana Library. If you couldn't tell from both of the hats that I wear, I love the Ohio literary community, and I'm thrilled to bring my 2 favorite organizations together to talk about books this evening. For anyone new to the realm of children's literature, SCBWI is the world's largest professional organization for children's writers and illustrators. It includes members from all over the world, as well as at all points in their publishing careers, from multi-published best-selling authors and illustrators to folks who are just dipping their toes into the industry. I myself have been a member since 2008, and I have learned so much about the craft and publishing over the years. And even better, SCBWI has helped me find just a fantastic community of like-minded writers and illustrators who are just so supportive of each other and who share a love of all things kidlit and really are just the best. So for anybody not familiar, there are actually 2 SCBWI chapters in Ohio. There's a Northern Ohio region and a Central and Southern Ohio region. That's us. And member assignment is determined by an individual's location. Northern Ohio is awesome and puts on lots of programs throughout the year, and they are just a short drive away. Or right now in this pandemic era of virtual events, they're more often just a Zoom away. So, and us, we are the Central and Southern Ohio region. We're currently holding a virtual meeting each month with guest speakers or presentations on kidlit topics. And these meetings are free for anyone to attend. We also do several workshops a year, which are also virtual at the moment. And we're hoping to have more in-person programs soon. You can find more information about our meetings, events, etc. on ohiocensouth.scbwi.org. And now before we jump into our program, I want to thank the Ohioana Book Festival sponsors and partners, all of whom you can find listed on the Ohioana website. And also a special thanks to the official festival bookseller, the Book Loft of German Village. You can get copies of all the books featured on this panel and featured at the festival by going online to bookloft.com. A portion of every festival sale goes to Ohioana and helps support our library and programs. So now I am very pleased to welcome our guests, Ohio authors Regina Bond, Lindsay Bonilla, Kate Hoefler, Ryan Huntley, and Rox Siles. So for brief introductions of everybody to get us started, Regina Bond is a consultant, instructor, and advocate in substance use disorder and mental health education. As a former school substitute teacher and current adult instructor, Regina has an innate passion for enhancing the lives of children and adults. Regina joins us tonight from Grove City, which is in the Columbus area. So welcome, Regina. Lindsay Bonilla is a professional storyteller and children's book author. While earning her bachelor's degree in theater and religion at Northwestern University, she fell in love with folktales and travel and has been performing interactive theater, sharing stories, and teaching workshops all over the world ever since. Her accolades include a 2018 Parents' Choice Award for Polar Bear Island and her newest book, I Love You With All of My Hearts, that we'll be talking about tonight. It was featured in the Wall Street Journal. Lindsay joins us from North Canton. And now over to Kate Hoefler. She received her Master of Fine Arts in Poetry from the University of Michigan, where she studied as a Colby Fellow. She is the author of several books, including Rabbit and the Motorbike, Real Cowboys, and Great Big Things. Kate joins us this evening from New Concord. All right, and up to Ryan Huntley. And he is a recent summa cum laude graduate of Upper Arlington High School. Ryan is pursuing a higher education in the field of computer science with an emphasis on game design at the Rochester Institute of Technology. He is currently studying Japanese and hopes one day to live and work in Japan. Ryan is joining us from Rochester, New York, so that's exciting. But he usually calls Upper Arlington and Columbus home. And last but certainly not least is Rox Siles. And Rox was born in Bolivia and moved to the United States at a young age. She grew up in Michigan, where she got married and attended medical school, and now works as a physician in Ohio. Rox's stories are often influenced by her family adventures and her Spanish heritage, and her goal is to share positive messages with children through her bilingual books. Rox joins us tonight from Avon Lake. So what an awesome group of authors we have here. Our topic for the evening is anthropomorphism in children's books. The books that, all these authors have written tonight, that's what they all have in common. They all either have anthropomorphic characters or anthropomorphic elements. So if that's a term you're unfamiliar with, anthropomorphic and anthropomorphism is the attribution of human characteristics, emotions, and behaviors to animals and other non-human things. Anthropomorphism has been around for, as long as stories have been told, really. It is a category that includes beloved and classic characters like Aesop's Fables, Winnie the Pooh, and the Nutcracker, as well as modern favorites like Josh Punk's Lady Pancake and Sir French Toast, and Kathryn Applegate's The One and Only Ivan. So, and anthropomorphic books are actually my personal favorite type of stories. So I'm really excited to chat about this topic with all of you. So first up, can you all tell us a little bit about your book festival title and road to publication journey? And we will start alphabetically for this one with Regina.
Hi, so first let me start by saying it's such an honor to be here. You can hear me okay? Perfect. Okay. I am so grateful to be here. I just want to say thank you to the Ohioana Book Festival and SCBWI, you, Kathryn, and all the authors that are here on the panel tonight. I'm so honored. So I'll start with my book title. The title is Buzz, the Premier Bee. And the title reflects the book's main character, which is Buzz, and her significance in the book, and that Buzz is not only an insect, but she's an essential insect. She's a bee, right? And therefore, I really believe that the book gives potential readers and also people that are just curious a heads up about what they can look forward to. Make sense? Should I go on about the publication journey or? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, keep it moving. Okay, so you know what, if I tell you my publication journey, some of you would probably consider it my road to publication as a very long one, because I penned the first manuscript, you all, back in 2010, right? 2010. And so, but you know what, I would pull it out every now and then, but life happens, right? Life happens. And so we all were in, know what COVID did for many of us. So I decided at the onset of COVID that I was determined to evolve my story. I pulled it back out and I really got determined. And of course it needed to evolve because it's over 10 years. I changed, the story had changed. And so I really promised myself to move it to publication. And the timing was great, because shortly after my promise to myself, I got connected to some great folks. I had lots of resources and folks that were advocating for me. And just to name a few, I got connected to a lady by the name of Miss Helen. She serves as my mentor. She recommended that I research and seek out this company called Daydreamers Press. It's a local publishing company here in Columbus. So I got connected to the owner, Carlotta. And through lots and lots of formal and informal consultations and discussions, these two individuals helped me develop and set in motion and carry out a project plan that included all of the necessary steps to move the book, to move it to the finish line. Daydreamers Press, as I was thinking about the book, I was, whenever you're authoring a book, you have to think about if you want to self-publish or you want to work with a publishing company. And I really wanted Carlotta to publish, but she didn't have the capacity. So she walked me through all the self-publishing steps up until the last minute. And she also connected me with many, many other resources. She connected me with a content editor who lives in New York and a local marketing consultant. And through her social media suggestions, I connected with Dahlia, who is all the way in Egypt, you all the way in Egypt. And she turned out to be my illustrator. So
she did a fantastic job. It's lovely.
Thank you. Thank you. I also got connected to a beekeeper who lives in Vermont. And so the timing was really perfect. And it really involved, my journey involved lots of long nights, as I bet you all can imagine, lots of revisions, tons of laughter, and lots of joy. I will share one other thing. I think, I was debating on whether or not I would share this personal part of my journey. And I thought, you know what, why not be real transparent? It was during this time also that I learned that I had a tumor in my brain. And let me tell you guys that, but before I tell you this, I had surgery and my book was published the day after a successful craniotomy. Can you get with that, guys? Now, as you can imagine, the book was a perfect distraction, right? It was a perfect distraction to get me through the process, and through lots of prayer and my faith and hope and lots of people that were involved in this process. I got through it. And so, for those people out there now that may be in the midst of writing or they want to write, just difficult things come up, tough times come up, but just push through it. Make sense?
Absolutely. That is wonderful. What a journey.
It has. It's been a unique journey, but it was, and I think too, the timing was perfect. It started in 2010. We may talk later a little bit more about how it started, but it really was perfect. And I mean, guys, I was working up through the last hour. I think if I'm correct, I submitted my book to be selected or considered for the festival. I think the deadline was November 30th, right, guys? You all remember probably. I did it on that day. And then December 5th was the actual surgery. It was the actual surgery. And it was, and I'm still in recovery, but I feel so grateful and thankful that that I was determined. And again, there are many, many people, some of which may be tuned in, that can take a lot of credit for really advocating for Buzz and the Premier Bee. So real thankful.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing, your story. And it's so inspiring. I'm seeing comments as well in the chat that's just, just fantastic. And we're so glad everything worked out well with your situation too. So yay. So alphabetically, next, we will hear from Lindsay Bonilla about her book as well that she has for this festival. And if you can tell us a little bit about your journey to publication as well.
Sure. Well, this is my book, I Love You With All of My Hearts. And I am someone who tends to have a lot of ideas that, I'm working on all the time. But this was something that I never envisioned becoming a book. It was just something that I used to do with my kids. When my oldest son was about 3 or 4, we used to have this just funny thing I would say to him, which was, I love you with all of my ears. And I would just take my ear and rub it on the top of his head, or I love you with all my toes. And I'd tickle him with my toes. And it was just this little, thing that we had so that I could tell him how much I loved him and make him laugh at the same time, which, I would just keep adding to it, my elbow and, whatever. So it was just a fun little thing that we did. And one day, of all my books, I can just remember writing this one. I can see the coffee shop I was sitting in when I was working on another book. And I said, wait a minute, maybe that little thing that I do with my son should be a picture book. And so I just started writing it. And unlike most of my other books, this was a pretty quick process. Before I sent this off to my agent, I think I only did maybe four drafts, quick, and only changing a couple little things here and there. And yeah, she sent it off, and my book was published with Creative Editions. It came out in August of 2021. And so, yeah, that's just kind of a brief version. So some of those ideas that you have, they're like, oh, it's just some silly little thing I do, or that's not a book idea. This, like I said, turned out to be one of my easiest publishing journeys, as opposed to some of the other ones that I'm like, this is a great idea. And I'm on draft number 45 or, still trying to crack it open.
Absolutely.
So things that seem super simple are, there's something there.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much for sharing. And you have lovely illustrations too. They picked out a fantastic illustrator for your book. You all have great illustrators. This is an evening tonight where actually we have all writers on our panel, no illustrators, but you can, if you all take a look at these, books online, you can just see what a variety there really is, and they just all look gorgeous. So thank you, Lindsay. And moving on alphabetically, we have Kate Hoefler, if you want to tell us about your book and your road to publication story.
So my book is Courage Hats, and like this. And it's a book about a girl who is afraid of bears and a bear who is afraid of people, and they kind of unknowingly take a train ride together. The girl is disguised as a bear, and the bear is disguised as a person. So she thinks she's sitting with a grown-up, and he thinks he's sitting with a cub. And so it's kind of about how we can warm up to the unknown and to each other. I actually wrote Courage Hats, and I think this is, Regina, this kind of reminds me a little bit about what you were talking about. I think sometimes we end up writing the book that we need at the time. So I wrote Courage Hats at a time when I needed courage. And it was during a writing residency, and I was having all kinds of, I know everybody probably listening and everybody, all the panelists here, we've all had imposter syndrome. We've all felt like this is a mistake or this. So I'd been given this kind of surprise writing residency, and I had all these feelings like, I don't know if I'm good enough. And I had to drive 11 hours by myself. I'd never done that. And so there were all these new things, not to mention I was going into the woods, and a friend of mine said, I think you need a bear bell. Like I even had bears on, and bears do make me a little nervous. So anyway, that I think I naturally started to write a book about fear and courage, and how we often don't have all the courage we need up front, that it's something that kind of ends up following us after we make a decision to kind of go through with something. And my road to publication was kind of, I always loved storytelling, and I did my undergraduate and graduate degrees in creative writing, and had to endure a lot of peers saying, what are you gonna do with that? So if any of you have ever heard that, like, what are you gonna do in the fine arts? What do you do with an MFA? Or what? So I understand, my family understands, like everybody had to hear it. And then I kind of did that long journey that people hear about. I think my manuscripts were passed on for, I don't know if it was like 7 years, 10 years. It's kind of a blur, eventually and I just kept submitting and submitting. And then one day, I got an email. I was really just hoping for a personalized rejection each time. But one day it wasn't a rejection, and it was for Real Cowboys. So that's the other thing. I think anytime you pick a book up off the shelf, that person has had stories and manuscripts turned down for years, typically. And I just think it means something when I hold people's books in my hands, because they persevered, and they persevered in the way that felt right to them to get the book on the shelf.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kate. That's why we love hearing everybody's road to publication stories, because they're all so different. There's so many ways to go about it, but there's also you'll hear common threads of just how long it takes. I think people think it's a lot of it just writing down a few words for a picture book and voila, you're done. But of course, much more goes into it than that. Yes, thank you so much, Kate, for sharing. And next alphabetically, we've got Ryan Huntley.
Hi. Yeah, I'm Ryan Huntley. My book is in the Meadow. I'm sorry that you can barely see this. I don't have any physical copies here in Rochester. But in the Meadow is the story of a maple tree in a meadow and the young pine tree that she takes under her wing. And it throughout the story, these two trees just sort of grow together, and we as readers just sort of see what they learn from each other. The pine tree says to the maple tree, I love how beautiful your leaves turn in the fall, and the oak tree says that I love, you know, how green you are during the winter. And it is really just this story about like friendship and kindness despite differences between these two characters. And I'm quite proud of it. So the story of this book coming into publication is kind of wild. This book began as a story that I told to my grandmother and co-author Gretchen Hirsch when I was 8. When I was a kid, I would just kind of do this. I would just come in and I would start telling a story that had come into my mind. And most of them, I'm sure, were not very high quality. But the adults in my life thankfully took the time to listen to them and not just dismiss them outright. So I told this story when I was 8, and my grandmother heard the promise in it, and she asked me to tell it again so that she could write it down, and she did. And then it sat there for you know, years and years and years, and it would just come up in conversation occasionally that, oh, we have this wonderful story that was created all these years ago. I really would love to try to get this into publication. And just kind of these offhanded comments just grew and grew and grew over time until like eventually, maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, she came into me and was like, hey, I found somebody who actually maybe wants to publish this. And then they didn't publish it. And then it sat there for a few more years. And it kind of went back to offhanded comments. And then eventually we got into contact with Sky's the Limit Publishing. And through no achievement of my own, all credit goes to both them and my co-author and grandmother for getting this into publication. But they did eventually pick it up, and I got into talks with them, and you know, after 11 years it was finally able to see the light of day. So that's in the Meadow.
Wonderful, thank you. Another long journey. That's a common theme we're hearing this evening. So wonderful, thank you for sharing so much. And last but not least, we'll go to Rox.
Hi, thank you. I can't thank you enough for this opportunity. I am just blown away with everybody's journey. So thank you for sharing. It's just so inspirational to me. So I came today to talk a little bit about Paco de Alpaca. Sorry, it sounds like I'm a little bit of a blur. There he is.
We can see it.
So Paco de Alpaca goes to the dentist. This is a story about a little alpaca who just dreams of becoming a champion at the annual animal fair. He wanted to be just like his cousin, who is this handsome llama, but he realizes as he gets older that he's not perfect. And, you know, he just has this goofy smile and he thinks he'll never be like his cousin. He goes to the dentist, but, you know, this is where he finds more than just shiny teeth. He finds his confidence and promotes dental health. So that's the story that, you know, we have to be comfortable in our own skin. And I think, you know, I try to make it as silly as possible. And I definitely wanted to incorporate some Spanish with it. So I, you know, when I was raising when my son was pretty young, I wanted to teach him more Spanish, and it was hard to find bilingual books, and that's what inspired me to do a bilingual book. As far as my journey, it is also a long one, and it's also an unconventional one. Actually, it all started when my son was in kindergarten, and it was one night where we just could not decide what book to read. I wanted to read one book, he wanted to read another. So at that point, we both just agreed to do our own story. And actually, that's what led to Charlie the Turtle and the Muddy Birthday Cake. And it was really his story. And it sat in the computer file for a while. And then the pandemic came along, and he's an only child, and by this time he was a few years older, but we needed something to do together in the long Ohio winters. And so that's when we decided to bring Charlie up to life, and that led to just more family time, and we had the opportunity to visit a local alpaca farm. And one thing that we did notice was that a lot of the alpacas had very silly teeth, and that's basically the inspiration of Paco de Alpaca Goes to the Dentist. I decided to do all the publishing as self-published. I had no idea where to start. This process was completely brand new to me. I did not know anyone who had written or published before. And it's actually the magic of Facebook. I joined a lot of groups and asked a ton of questions, met some amazing people, and basically that's what guided me to publishing. I will say it's probably the most challenging thing I've ever done. The process is very difficult, it was all uncharted territories for me, but it was one of the most rewarding things I've done now that I hold the book in my hand. I think it's just amazing to bring a character to life. So that's my journey.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Can you actually hold up your book, one of the open pages? We'll see if it'll kind of show up. So for the audience, if you haven't seen this book, every page is both in English and in Spanish. So the entire book is bilingual. We can see it a little bit.
So sorry. But
It's okay.
Yeah, the top and bottom. So
Yeah.
English on top, green, Spanish in the bottom, and I try to color code some words so that it allows the reader to, correlate the words and learn a little bit along the way.
Absolutely. Representation is so important in the children's, literature industry right now, and, having a global perspective. So that is fantastic to see that, rocks. So it's, we have Spanish speakers who will feel right at home, and then, non-Spanish speakers who will be learning something. So that's just wonderful to see. So wonderful. We'll move into our next topic of conversation then. So why did you all decide to cast anthropomorphic characters in your book, or a mix of anthropomorphic and human characters? And do you think your story would work the same with only human characters? Why or why not? And Rox, is it okay if I start with you and go backwards?
Absolutely. One thing that inspired me to use an animal character is, again, going back to that visit to the animal farm. Animals truly have their own personalities, and they, some are shy, some are more friendly, some are, I think we can relate to their personality, and that's what, again, they're full of personality, and that's what encouraged me to focus on the animal characters. So yeah, that's where it started. And I'm sorry, I missed the second part of the question.
The second part is, do you think it would work as well with human characters, or kind of what do you think would be different about it?
I think that it would work with a human characters, but at the same time, it's nice to have an animal character because we can always find someone to relate to. I think that in this particular story, there's not only llamas and alpacas, there are goats, and and I think we can all relate to them, and you could see yourself in these animals. So I'm sure it could be done in a human way, but I think kids just draw to these silly characters too.
Excellent. Love it. How about staying with backwards alphabetical order? How about Ryan? If you want to tell us a little bit about your trees and if you think that it would still work with human characters, and why you pick trees.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of difficult for me to speak to like the specific reasoning behind choices, because again, the story came from my mind 11 years ago. But I think that definitely does speak to the point that Rox, you were saying, we just naturally latch on to these anthropomorphic characters and relate to them really easily, as opposed to like a human character. So I think the fact that as a child, in imagining this story, my mind immediately went to creating these anthropomorphic characters really speaks to the power of that. And something interesting that we learned in the process of creating this story and also bringing it to print is this really interesting parallel between the story and that plays out in the book, and the way the really like actually complex interactions between real trees in the real world, that like these trees, there's this great parallel between like symbiosis and friendship that really just shows like how intrinsically natural like kindness towards other beings is. And I think that's a really strong point that couldn't be made by just talking about humans, is that like kindness is a fact of nature. It's not something we created. Whereas like hatred and malice are things that we did create. You don't see trees, fighting with each other or holding grudges against each other the way humans do. So I think that's a really important part of the story that makes a point that you couldn't make with human characters.
Absolutely. And I think just the fact that is, when you originally created it, when you were little, that's, what appealed to you. So I think that in itself shows how appealing, anthropomorphic and, characters are, and how accessible, those sort of imaginative things are for kids. So thank you so much, Ryan. How about Kate?
Yeah, I think when I started to, when I knew I wanted to write a story about fear of the unknown, I couldn't really think of something that's more unknown than having two characters who are different species. So not even two very different people, but just separate species. And but I do think that animals came into play, because when I was thinking about fear and how devouring fear is, we see these traits in even kind of the old children's stories, right? The I'll eat you up kind of that kids love, right? And so in this story, May is saying a bear is big and eats small things, and she's small. And Bear's thinking a person is small, or no. Did I get that mixed up? May's thinking, yeah, that a bears are big and eat small things, and she's small. And Bear says people are small and eat. It's the opposite.
Yeah.
Bear's big, right? They eat big things, and so. Yes. But it's this sense of where fear, it's a devouring fear. It's not just, what if someone doesn't like me? It's a visceral fear. So it was easier to do that, I think, with a bear and a person. And I guess I won't even get into what a devour with just people. That's a different story. That's like cannibalistic. I don't know, but I mean, it could have been done, but not in the same way. And I also think that I like working with animals in stories, because of how much we can just kind of let down our guard, so to speak. I feel like I can do more with vulnerability when it comes to animals. But this was kind of, an interesting world where I had people and animals. And Jessica Bagley, who I completely fangirled before when I thought she was going to be the illustrator, she ended up creating this world where, and by the way, every picture book is its own distinct world, whether it's all people, all animals, but she created this world where people and animals might take a train together or go to camp together. That's actually the mundane world. So this devouring fear is in the mundane world, even though it's an animal and a person. So yes and no, but I think it had to do with that kind of visceral fear that it was easier to do with a bear and a person.
Absolutely. And that's just a little element of humor too, to kind of see like, oh, this big bear is afraid of this little girl. So, and with clever wordplay too. And, the bear thinks that the kid is a cub in, its little hat. And then the kid thinks that the bear is a big human in its little hat. So it's and that has a lot to do with the illustrations as well, kind of that partnering of illustrations and words to kind of get all those things across. So really fun. Thank you, Kate. And off to Lindsay.
Yes, so I know one of the questions was, do I think the book could work without the anthropomorphic characters? And in this case, I absolutely think it could not work.
Yeah. Absolutely for yours, yes.
I kind of told you the genesis of the book of me playing this little game with my kids and saying I love you with all my ears, etc. And so when the idea first popped into my head about, making this into a picture book, I said, okay, I started thinking visually, what are you going to see? And I thought you definitely cannot see on every spread a mom, rubbing her ear on her kid's head, rubbing her elbow. Going to get boring very quickly. And so that was where the idea for the animals came in. I said, okay, well, that's going to be boring. But if I took these different animals, that had these different traits, like, in excess, like huge ears or long toes, then it becomes much more interesting to look at. So, that was kind of where that idea came from. And, I'll just give you an example. This is much more interesting. The elephant and the fennec fox, I love you with all of my ears, than looking at my ears. And so, it allowed for it to be more fun and playful as well. So, I was also going to probably run out of suitable body parts pretty quickly. But, with animals, I could do things like, I love you with all of my stripes. So I could do, add in zebras and tigers. And I love you with all of my scales, which this is kind of fun when I go and read it with kids. I'll have them, if you have this body part, go ahead and touch it or point to it, and if you don't, then don't. So it makes it a little bit more fun. But I will say this is something that a lot of people don't know about the story. My intention was at the end that it would go back to being human. With I love you with all of my heart, because I was like, I did want that, mom, parent, connection. And so it was sent to my agent and to the editor like that with, these are the animals that you could use. But at the end, the suggestion was just that then it would be a parent and child. And the editor came back to me and was like, how do you feel about using an octopus? I love you with all my hearts. I'm like, you're brilliant. So I can't even take credit for the animal on the cover of the book. That wasn't even my idea, but I share that to say that I'm so glad that I get to collaborate. That's what I love about making picture books, how collaborative it is with the with your editors, with your illustrator, with the art director. There's just so many things that I couldn't have come up with. And so I love that part of it. But yeah, so this would definitely not be nearly as interesting to read.
A very different book. For sure. And it's educational too. You have back matter about some of the animals as well.
Yeah, there are facts at the end. And that was another interesting thing as I started researching the different animals that I might include. I was finding so many interesting ones, like, I love you with all my nose. I found all of these really interesting nose animals and all these different things they would do with their noses. And I couldn't decide like which one should I keep. And so when I sent it to my agent, I said, should I leave them all there and let them pick one that they like the best? Or should I just, X the others and just put one? And my agent said, like, let's just leave them, they can decide. But I had no idea that they would go about like combining them in unique ways. So that was pretty cool and surprising too, to see that, they're like, yeah, there's all these neat animals. Let's put them together in one spread. So that was pretty neat.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Regina, last but certainly not least for this question. So how did you come to the decision to make your book about bees, have it be the anthropomorphic bees versus, humans talking about bees and that sort of stuff? So
yeah, well, honestly, in the beginning, I really didn't think about this. It just seemed very natural. The day I first wrote the manuscript, my husband and I were watching a TV show. It was about bees, and I had shared with him about my desire. I was thinking about my dad, who had passed away a few years before, and I wanted to do something to honor him. He always encouraged me to read, my sister and brother and I, and during that time, I was also in working in the area of working with businesses around the misuse of substances in the workplace, and also serving as a substitute teacher. So, and I was exposed to lots of children and lots of children's books. And so, the day my husband and I, we were here at home, we were watching the show, I just started writing and speaking the story aloud. And my husband, the witty person that he is, he's a funny guy, you guys. He started just whipping out these kind of like silly phrases or amusing phrases. And we were just having a good time. And so that's when I penned the first manuscript. Now, as I got further into really being committed to the book, and thinking about the characters, it was almost like, for example, one of the characters in the book is a drone bee, which is a male bee. His name is Mr. Chauncey, and my dad's name was Chauncey. So I thought about my dad. So I kind of patterned Mr. Chauncey after my dad, Chauncey. Miss Mamie, here you can see Miss Mamie. Miss Mamie came about because my hairdresser, Mamie, is from Senegal, Africa. And she used to talk to me, guys, about she has shared so much with me about Senegal and Africa. And so I have a huge imagination also, and I daydream a lot. And I just came up with this place, Kayacombe. And then it was like, and I consider myself to be a vulnerable learner. So then I established Kayacombe Academy. And then it's like, I just started diving into learning about honeybees, and they are just magical. I mean, what they do. And then it's almost like I was Buzz. I became, Buzz was just a little bit about the book. Buzz is this bee that she lives in Kayacombe, and she attends Kayacombe Academy, where Miss Mamie is the teacher, and Buzz, along with what's called up and coming troop bees, or up and coming bees, are trying to enter into the troop, so that they can carry out pollination during the upcoming harvest holiday. And so Buzz is learning how to become the next queen bee. And I'm telling you guys, I had so much fun with Buzz, and just, it's almost like they take, you all know what I'm talking about, right? You know what I'm talking about, Rox. You guys know what I'm talking about, right, Kate? Ryan, Lindsay, it's like you become these characters, and you can't wait to get back into it. And I agree with you, Lindsay, in terms of the collaboration. When you've got, all these other people that are going side by side with you, and it's not a single thing. So just to answer the question, it wasn't one of those things, I think, Kathryn, that just I thought about and I'm going to do this, but it just organically happened. And I also think that as I did my research, I felt like using the bees it lightens it up, because my book dives into some dangers and the importance of making good decisions. It talks about rules. So I think it lightens it up. It lightens things up, and it makes it fun for children. In answer to the second question, would my story work with human characters? I think it would, but I don't think it would be as much fun for children, right? I think it would absolutely work, the lessons that are taught in this book, but I think again, I like the lighter with the bees, and I think universally people can relate to bees, honeybees, right?
And it's so fun to see from the bees' point of view too. I mean, literally, if it was a human telling the story, everything would be teeny tiny, but we've got the bees, and it's their world. So
That's right. You have so many options, right? So many options.
So wonderful. So kind of the next question that I have, then this one I will just kind of, because we've touched on it here and there, about why we think kids are drawn to these, these anthropomorphic stories. Does anybody have kind of anything additional to add to that on, why that's just, kids just love them?
I do. It makes me think about, animals represent comfort. I think it also allows children to be in charge. And I think they're big confident boosters, right? So I think, and I also think it can impact a child's accountability if you can go there. And animals are, again, across the globe, universal. So it really, all children can relate.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's almost the same. They're drawn to animals the reason that I'm drawn to using them, which is that I remember I heard this Richard Peck interview years ago where he was talking about how the protagonist, the main character, has some kind of issue, of course, to solve, and that we often have to isolate them a little bit as characters so that they're working something out on their own. And it's easier to do that, frankly, with animals. And so the vicarious experience that, for example, we can have an animal go on a road trip by themselves. They can be living on their own. They can be cooking. But yet children see themselves in these animals. So I think that it would be very hard sometimes to have the same thing happening to a child where it's, I think that children would have questions like, where's this person's caregiver? Or
yes.
So instead it kind of gives them a really special vicarious experience where and I think that they can kind of they're less guarded between connecting with an animal too. It's weird to say that they don't see those. It's easier to, I don't know, not have those kind of superficial human concerns, which is funny since we're talking about anthropomorphism. It's like, okay, well, they have human qualities, but they're also stripped down to kind of the most just emotional honesty of what it is to be alive without the superficial kind of human things. Like, if that makes sense. So you can,
absolutely.
So sometimes they'll just connect, like, what is this? How is this raccoon feeling? And there's just kind of a different kind of honesty, but I think there's just so many more adventures that you can take a kid on in some respects with anthropomorphic animals.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that.
And this is tangentially related to that, but like, I think the fact that we have like culturally these very like specific, sort of archetypal images of different animals and like what they represent or like what their personality is just based on the type of animal, I think makes them really like instantly relatable compared to like a human. They could be anything, humans are complex and weird and crazy, and you got to set up a lot in order to make a human relatable. But with an animal, they have these very like outwardly visible qualities that we associate with them, and we attribute a personality to an animal just like based on the type of animal it is, and it's very easy to see those same aspects in ourselves.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that. And Lindsay, were you gonna hop into?
I was hopping on that too. Just I think that there are certain things, like so when I was working on my first book, Polar Bear Island, so much of, I think one of the things I love about it is anthropomorphism is you can do a lot of word plays, and for example, I have a line in here that Parker the polar bear, he growled. Like, that's perfectly acceptable for a bear, and like kids are often told like you can't have that response, you know what I mean? You're not, but we all have that like bear inside of us that wants to growl when things aren't going our way. And so I think that also makes it more relatable. It's like we do have these characteristics that are similar to animals, and sometimes it is okay for them to come out, and it is okay. I think that's where like humanizing them helps us to see like that we are whole people with a lot of possibilities. We can't all be happy all the time, or so I think sometimes allowing those, looking for those things, word plays and things like that, for me has helped me to see the characters and studying their behaviors and seeing what about these animals' behaviors is human. I actually come from the world of theater. That's my training is in theater and my background. And so I think too, like, what kid doesn't want to step into the shoes of an animal, like into being whatever. I mean, for my son, it was a Komodo dragon, and, I just, just different animals. And there's a freedom in that, there's a freedom in that. So I think there's a lot of fun that kids, and they can also, it's okay to have some animal-like responses sometimes as a child, even, can't stay there, but we do have that. We're humans. So, and animal-like.
And actually on the flip side of that, Ryan, your trees are, kind of even better at showing patience and, just, relationship that develops over years and, but in a very safe and friendly way.
I mean, yeah, it's hard to see the illustrations on here, but every illustration of every page of this book is basically like a different season. So as you're literally going through the years as you flip through, but it's all just like these vignettes of the same place. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and something kids are so familiar with it because it's something they see in their own backyard and can definitely relate to. So yeah, I just love all the options you have in the anthropomorphic world. One of my favorite things when I was little, I remember watching The Brave Little Toaster a lot. I always thought that one was so fun that it's a toaster, it's anthropomorphic, and he had a friend that was a blanket, and of course the blanket was kind of a wet blanket, and now it was just fun. So I just love all of the creative options you can kind of have in this world. So Rox, anything additional?
No, I mean, I'm just, I definitely agree with everyone. When you start even thinking about objects, Thomas the Train.
Oh, yes.
I think those type of characters are, not intimidating. They become, they transform into this lively thing that people can relate. So, it's just a great thing for kids. And definitely it also allows their imagination to really expand, which is great.
Yeah. And what kid doesn't run to, an alpaca when they see one at a petting zoo? Very appealing. So wonderful. Well, moving on to our next question. What do you think are some challenges of writing anthropomorphic books and characters? And what do you enjoy about it? I'm going to hop into the middle alphabetically this time, and we'll start with Kate.
Well, I guess I would just it's sort of what I mentioned before, is there's so much freedom. I feel like it's just kind of can be stripped down to kind of this, just the pure emotion of what it is to be alive, you can have an animal embodying that. I find that, it is easier for me to work with animals when I'm going to do something about vulnerability or grief or pain. Because I think, I'm both it's easier for me as a writer, and I think in some ways it's easier for readers too, just because we both kind of have our guards down with animals, and they're a little easier to welcome, I think, into just to relate to and connect to. One of the challenges, they actually end up being kind of funny, the challenges, because it's like these unwritten rules you don't think about, like Lindsay, since you brought up an octopus. So it's like, sometimes you're thinking, okay, I can have an octopus doing this or that. Like maybe it's going to be cooking, but I don't know if I should have it ride a bike because that might be awkward. It's like the funny, like, but maybe I could have a dog riding a bike, or maybe I could have, so like it's funny how we realize we have a sense of what certain animals should or shouldn't do. Although it'd be kind of, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I would love to see an illustrator put an octopus on a bike, but I don't know if they'd want me to pitch that to them. I don't know if they want that challenge, but, and also sometimes with rhythm, I think it's a little hard. I think this is why sometimes we see a lot of books that have like a mouse, a bear, a fox. It's one syllable. It's like, because I feel this way. This is why by the way, I'm like, this is stuff that I've used. I'm talking about my own book. It's easier musically to have fewer syllables. So sometimes I'll really like an animal, and I guess it's okay if you just name it something else at first and the illustrator can just make it that animal. But it's like, it's funny. It's just like different challenges that other people might not think about. It's like when you're using it, like, okay, an armadillo. How many times do I want a parent to say armadillo? But I could just call it like Joe, and then, but he happens to be an Joe the armadillo, or whatever. But overall, I think in the end, the question I always ask myself is, the same thing that I ask when I have people in a book, and that is like, is this book honest? Is it telling the truth about the human condition? And I find that you can do it just as powerfully with animals.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. We'll hop around to Lindsay. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that when I'm using animal characters, I'm still like researching the animals themselves, because I still want to be sure that their behavior is appropriate to the character, or if I'm going to break out of that and make them do something that isn't appropriate to a bear, or put them in a setting that a bear wouldn't be in, then I need to make that believable. So I think that there's still just as much like research going on as if I'm, and maybe not to the same extent, but I'm still researching the nonfiction aspects, of this creature, and then allowing those to come into the writing. And so I would say that's both a challenge and something that I love, because, I've learned about so many different animals that way. And I think I mentioned earlier how much I love like the word play that you can do when you're doing the anthropomorphic characters, because there's just a lot more fun you can do with words, with animals, and other things. It doesn't have to just be animals, but or like, we talked about Lady Pancake and Sir French Toast. I know I have that one over here. That's a good one. So, yeah, you can like do so many more fun things with language. So that's one of the fun things I love about those types of characters. But yeah, I would say challenges is definitely still, despite the fact that your character is an animal, they still need to have they still need to be a complete character. You can't allow them to be just a, oh, that's the penguin or whatever. I mean, they still have to have a complete character. I don't want to say every character in your book isn't going to maybe have an arc, but I'm saying it's like, it can be easy to just, kind of whitewash them a little bit and not make them as fleshed out. But I think that you have to avoid that temptation and still really dig into, who they are and, what they want. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Ryan, how about your trees? What was difficult about making your characters trees? They can't move for sure.
Yeah, they definitely cannot move. I mean, yeah, on the most superficial level, depending on what you pick, it definitely puts a lot of restrictions on like the situations that you're able to put them in. On the flip side, though, it does also open up a lot of situations that you could put them in that you can't put a human character in. Like if I want to be able to explore the fantastical world that is the inside of a beehive, for example, like I can't be a human. You were saying that earlier. Everything would be tiny. But whereas when you put yourself into the shoes of the bee, obviously everything becomes a lot more magical, and it just becomes a lot more of a fun world, but just like, not necessarily just specifically for trees, but for any anthropomorphic character, I think the ultimate challenge is striking the right balance between the humanity of your story and your characters and the metaphor and possibilities that are opened up by making your characters animals. Because if you don't get that just right, you end up with either a metaphor that's way too heavy-handed and people don't like your book, or you end up with your readers being like, okay, but why is it a tree and not just a person? So you really have to get right into that sweet spot where the human element is there, but it's still meaningful that they are what you made them. And then just like, as for what I enjoy, just like, it's just fun, like humans are boring sometimes.
That's why I like it too. You can just do so much with it. So awesome. Thank you so much. How about Rox? Did you have any challenges making your characters alpacas, or what did you particularly enjoy about it?
Yeah, no, one of the biggest challenges is, again, how do you make it so that it's, how do you incorporate human features without confusing the reader? So, my book was about going to the dentist, and I knew I wanted to incorporate that because the whole idea was, hey, they have crooked teeth. But how do you do that? It's like, is a goat going to take him to the dentist? No. Like, how do you, make that so that it still becomes, it seems natural and not forced upon the reader? So that's where the farmer had to come in. There had to be a human connection to make sure that it's not confusing to the reader. So I think that was a challenge. But yeah, and I could see how objects, how, to cross that line between being what Ryan was saying, not make them too human, but, allow a bridge for our readers.
Yeah. Kind of what comes to mind as you mentioned the farmer is, yeah, you kind of had to make that decision there. Are they going to be a pack a world where there is a farmer who takes them places, or are they going to be so anthropomorphized that they can, like Kate said, ride a bike or drive the cars themselves? And that does give everything a very different feel too. And so, yeah, I really liked when your farmer came in, actually. I thought that was really cute, and getting him on the truck and everything. So wonderful. And Regina, how about you?
Yeah, so I think that, the challenges.
Oh,
I'm just talking away. Okay, here we go. I think the challenges, they depend on your objectives in terms of what you really want to do with the book. In my case, I wanted to use the bees to teach a little bit about science and pollination and, just their impact to the world, and also very delicately teach about the misuse of prescription drugs. And so, at the same time, keeping it simple for my targeted age group. So, and the good thing about it is I do, and also allowing myself to really be creative. It's fiction, but at the same time, I wanted some real elements. I think similar to what you said, Lindsay, in terms of keeping with some of the real, but also allowing it to be creative, or allowing it to be just what I felt it should be, right? And so the cool thing about it too is there's back matter in my book also that really allows, and there's a note up front that instructs parents and educators on how the best way to read the book with the child and to process it with the child. So yeah, and I will tell you too, in wanting to, because obviously I'm not an expert in science or anything like that. So it was a lot of research that I had to do. I mean, a lot of checking and rechecking and revisions to, make sure they got 5 eyes. And oh my gosh, because Buzz started off being a guy at first, but not, but we turned Buzz to, the queen bee. So, yeah, and it was a lot of fun for me. I just got a lot of joy out of writing this book.
wonderful. And we are coming up soon on the group Q&A for the attendees. So I will kind of pause now to let everybody know who's watching, that if you have any questions for our panelists, you can pop those into the Q&A feature. And conveniently, one of the questions I'm seeing is actually my next discussion question. And that is, what anthropomorphic books, characters, movies, etc., what inspired you when you were young, and what are some of your modern day favorites as well? So Regina, why don't we start with you?
My gosh, I'm probably going to date myself with this, but growing up, I love fairy tales. So I loved Goldilocks and the Three Bears and the Three Little Pigs. And modern day, I really love Charlotte's Web. Mm-hmm. There's something so loving, and I really love Charlotte's Web. So, and
talk about dealing with like big topics for kids. I mean, poor Charlotte, demise. So that's a wonderful one. Let's just go alphabetical for this one. So how about Lindsay?
Yeah, I would say the ones that stand out to me growing up would be Ferdinand. I love Ferdinand, the Velveteen Rabbit. I love Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, some of my favorites. Today, I actually went and just pulled some off my kids' shelves that really stood out to me as some of my favorite books today. Mr. Tiger Goes Wild by Peter Brown. This
Yes.
is a fan favorite here at my house. If you haven't read this, it's hysterical, and
It really is. It's one of my favorites too.
it's wonderful. I mean, you can't go wrong with the pigeon, right?
Mhm.
I mean, I think every child can relate to this pigeon. every parent can relate to their child being like the pigeon. So I think this is another great example. We already talked about Lady Pancake and Sir French Toast. You know, those are some of my favorite ones. So yeah, that's just a smattering of the ones that I enjoy.
That's awesome. Yes, and for anybody who hasn't read Mr. Tiger Goes Wild, highly recommend it. But it's also one of those that would be hard to do with people because it's a tiger who's in an anthropomorphic society where they're all wearing clothes and he doesn't want to wear the clothes anymore. So we have definitely it's better with tigers than it would be with kids. So, but it's just a silly book. But it's also, I mean, has important themes as well about acceptance and prejudices, and yeah, so it's a good one. Highly recommend.
And one more before you go. Clovis Keeps His Cool. This is a new book.
I know that one.
It is about a bull in a china shop. He literally runs the china shop, and he has to control his anger not to destroy all of the cups in the shop that his grandmother passed down to him. It's beautiful. It has a great message. And you just totally relate to the bull in the china shop metaphor. It's so great. So
awesome. I'll have to look for that one.
So Kathryn, excuse me, I meant to share this one, The Giving Tree.
Yes.
I read that book a lot to my sons, my older son in particular, but yeah, I could read that, go back to that so much, that Giving Tree, so much to learn, and so much love in that book.
Yeah, that's a wonderful one as well. And actually, I just real quick looked up, and I knew there was a middle grade book about a tree as well, but I wanted to make sure I had it correct. And if I had mentioned The One and Only Ivan earlier by Kathryn Applegate, she also has Wish Tree that is told from a tree's perspective as a lengthy novel, and that is excellent too. I've read that one. So just all age groups, you can still do the anthropomorphism. So I was going alphabetical. So I am up to Kathryn. What are some of your favorites from your childhood and some modern day ones?
So from my childhood, I still have a deep connection to the Muppets, Jim Henson. I mean, Jim Henson just understood how to do that honesty about what it is to be alive, and to do it with Muppets, right? Like, what are they? And for children and adults to connect deeply to them. And I also loved how he realized that you actually entertain both the adult and the child when you're creating something quote unquote for children, that you want something for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he was really formative now and then. And then Lindsay, I did the same thing. I grabbed some books that I just love that have, so The Fog, I don't know if you guys have read this.
I have not.
Okay. I don't know if you guys see, yeah, and Kennard Pack, who of course, yeah, I love.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it has kind of a mix of people and anthropomorphic animals, birds in particular. The Dreamer, Il Seigneur, just one of my favorites. The Invisible Bear, and then The Lion and the Bird.
Good ones.
Yeah, and they're actually, yeah, just some of my favorite picture books, period. But yeah, they happen to have anthropomorphic animals in them.
I love it. Thank you so much. And Ryan, how about you? What were some of your favorites growing up? And if you have any modern day ones, you have examples that you like.
Oh boy, I could go for hours naming, like there were so many books that I read when I was young, but I wrote a couple down prior to this, and on that list is actually Frog and Toad, which was mentioned in the question that was sent in the chat. So we're on the same wavelength there. And another one that I wanted to mention was Good Dog Carl by Alexandra Day. Amazing books. I love very absurd situations with anthropomorphic characters. That's something that I think they excel at beyond human characters, is just like the absurdity of the situation of a Rottweiler taking care of a baby is an absolutely wonderful situation that continues to entertain me even now, and just has so many possibilities. And as far as modern examples, not all of them fall into the anthropomorphic vein, but a lot of them do, and that is the movies of Studio Ghibli, which are very much in the same vein that you were talking about, Kate. It's made for children, but it's something that absolutely anyone of anybody of any age can appreciate. And Miyazaki is just a master of creating these incredibly human stories, no matter what characters. Like Totoro is a wonderful example of that. It's just like these two characters could not be any more different, and it's just this incredibly like human connection between them that is portrayed masterfully in that film.
We have lots of fans in the chat too. Good choice. Thank you. And Rox, how about you?
Yeah, so I grew up in South America, and one of the shows that really sticks to mind is something called El Tesoro de Saber. This was a show, it's based in Mexico, but it was broadcasted to South America. But the main character is a scarecrow, and he's in a farm, and there is the tomatoes, the peas, the chicks. They all have their own personalities, their own silliness, and they do a lot of teaching. It was kind of similar to the Sesame Street. So that's what I grew up with. And the Muppets. Yes, that was the first thing that came to mind. And I think those are great characters. Most recently, one of my favorite movies is Toy Story, because all the characters, you can relate not only as a character, but also remember playing with them. I mean, I think it's just so hard not to relate with Mr. Potato Head, and I think that bringing them to life, it just adds another layer of love and just remember your own childhood, even as an adult. So those are some of my favorites.
That's wonderful. Yeah, Pixar is fantastic at anthropomorphizing everything. They managed to anthropomorphize emotions and cars and souls, and yeah, so definitely if it's something you're interested in writing, I mean, film and TV are great places to go to as well, in addition to books, and Pixar ones are a good choice, definitely. And I will also say that Muppets are underrated. They need more love. Especially their literary ones that they used to have, like Muppet Treasure Island. Yeah, that was fantastic. I wish they do more of those.
Clever stuff. That's things that I'm still realizing now. Like, oh, I didn't get that then. And there was, yeah.
All right, I'm going to do a couple from the audience. So let me go back to it. When you were all children, did you pick out books because they had anthropomorphic characters over other books? I can say with 100% certainty I did. If there was a dog on the cover, I was going to read it. If there were only kids on the cover, I was probably like, eh.
I think I did too. I think because I want to live in that world. That's the world I want to live in, where animals talk and different creatures are alive. So yeah, I think, and I would say even now, I try to read a lot of middle grade as well, and I'm always looking for those ones that have the animal friendships and different things like that, like you mentioned, Lonely Ivan. So yeah, I think I still am doing that.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I think I definitely did. I know something that I have been told time and time again by my family and people who knew me at the time is that a phrase that I had when I was a kid was that in my world, everything is talkable. So I think I definitely had this disposition of like seeing the humanity in things in inanimate objects and animals and things. And I mean, obviously that sort of worked its way into the creation of this story that eventually became my book. But like, yeah, I very much liked books that catered to that sort of fantastical worldview that I took on in approaching the mundane reality.
I have a feeling we were all kind of drawn to that type of book growing up. Rox or Regina, any additional thoughts on that one?
No, I was going to say, I definitely see my son walking through the library and just going for those books. I think they're in some ways less intimidating and more inviting. They perhaps may be silly, but yet you may read and may have a very strong message that you don't expect. So again, don't judge a book by its cover, but I think we just gravitate to something that's more neutral and less intimidating. And I think that's what animals and objects may do for the kids.
Regina, any extra thoughts?
Just something funny. It's been so long since I was a kid.
You're a kid at heart.
Oh my goodness. But I think I agree with what everyone said. It just, you're just kind of drawn to those things that are just not outside of your world, something else that you can relate to, I think.
Definitely. We'll do another kind of free-for-all question. Have any of you, do you have dreams with anthropomorphic characters in them?
Not yet, not even.
No.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah.
I know it does.
I think NyQuil would help with that, maybe.
I mean, I know there were lots of nights where I went to bed thinking about Buzz, thinking about the story. And no, I can't remember.
Oh, you're muted. There you go.
Sorry about that. Yeah, but there were lots of nights when I went to bed. I mean, Buzz was on my heart, and Kayacomb and all the activities and the troop bees. And so I don't know. I guess I wouldn't count it out. I can't remember a specific, but yeah, might be cool. I'm with you, Ryan, right? Hey, why not?
Now we're going to definitely pay attention to our dreams and see.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm going to be like trying to induce an anthropomorphic dream now.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, now we'll have to know if anybody has one. You'll have to let the rest of us know. And this is kind of a fun one. I think this will be maybe our last one for Q&A, and then we'll wrap up with our final question. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. But we have, so obviously we all love, writing about anthropomorphic characters. Do any of you have a real life furry or plant friend that inspires you in your writing, or maybe just keeps you company?
Yes,
We'll do a free-for-all.
absolutely.
My dog's on my lap every time I write. He's in his crate right now because this would have been a disaster had he been.
I gotta find a picture because he's not here, but I feel like everyone needs to experience my dog.
Yeah, I'll share that actually this is my son's dog, but he's been with me. Kilo was up nights with me, so I would look over at him, and it was reassuring to have him. Am I like going in and out, guys?
Oh, okay.
Did you hear that? So did you hear, my son's dog, his name is Kilo, he lives with us. He would be here many nights when I was up thinking about Buzz and writing, and I would look over at him. So I got a sweet spot for him.
I love it. Lindsay, Rox, and I know Ryan's looking for a picture.
Yeah, no, I have two Chihuahuas. One recently passed, but she was perhaps an inspiration to my next book. I think, there's a reason why animals can be our best friends too. We can talk to them, they keep great secrets and certainly show their love, and they show their emotions, and it's very inspiring to see, their pureness and their heart. So yeah, no, I definitely think a little companion is very, useful in the process.
I saw a little puppy nose up there. Aw. That is a cutie.
I also
And
have
Lindsay?
a dog.
Okay.
Yes, I have a dog, a half shepherd, half shepherd, half hound, who's called Blitzen. So he's very inspirational, and actually my children who they change their favorite animals kind of like they change their clothes, and I'd say that's probably an even bigger inspiration there.
Yes.
Than my dog, but he's very inspirational. Yes.
That's great. And Ryan, what was your pup's name?
His name is Rudy.
Oh, what a cutie. So he's back home right now?
Yes,
Yes.
he is.
I do remember that being a bummer in college, not being able to have your pet. You did
Yeah.
have fish. Are you allowed fish?
I think you are allowed fish here. I know there's someone somewhere who has a ferret.
That is one of my favorites. We have
that has escaped at least once, and that was the talk of campus.
I'm shocked they're actually allowing ferrets there, because they are.
I don't know if they are or not.
Yeah,
but
that's
there is
true.
one.
Yes, they are delightful little characters for sure. Cool. Well, to wrap us up, this is kind of a two-parter. What I would like to know for everybody is if you could all tell us a little bit about your next project, if you have one, or if you're able. I know sometimes things are under contract and a little hush-hush, but if you're able to tell us, as well as what is kind of one piece of publishing advice that you would give for the folks in the audience who are themselves hoping to be, on a panel like this someday and, with published books under their belt. So let's just we'll go alphabetical for this one as well. So Regina, what's next for you?
Okay, so this book is part of a series. So, but I'll back up and say that right now with this book, the Spanish translation is almost completed, almost finalized. I'm in discussions about it being translated into the Arabic language. Let's see, what else? The series, I know I've been dreaming on this and imagining and taking notes. So I know that Buzz will continue to do things and make great choices in real life situations. The advice I would give is, I think collaboration. We don't have to know it all. And also striking the balance between what's in your heart. I know what my mentor always shared with me was, Regina, this is your story. This is what was given, God gave to you. So, but there are so many other components in terms of making it, bringing it all together. And so I think that stay true to yourself, what's been poured into you so that you can pour out. I think remembering that you don't have to know everything. You don't have to be the expert in everything. Collaboration is key. Get your money ready for marketing and all those other things. And just have fun with it. Just have a good time with it. This book really, I got a lot of fulfillment out of it, and I'm looking forward to the next one. It was oftentimes when I would start writing, I couldn't stop. It's just like it was good. So I think those key things, collaboration is key. Understand there's lots of resources and many people out there that are willing to help you. Sometimes you just ask, being bold too, and being vulnerable, being okay with saying, I don't know this, or, oh my gosh, being able to receive feedback. But at the same time, staying true to the vision that you have.
It's wonderful advice. And SCBWI is a great place, I will say, to find, that knowledge about publishing as well, and, your publishing friends. So wonderful. Thank you, Regina. Lindsay, what's next for you?
Yes, so actually my next book will be with anthropomorphic characters that are not animals. They are musical notes. So my next book comes out March of next year, 2023, and it's called The Note Who Faced the Music. And it is all about Half Note, who doesn't feel whole and just, feels like she's not good enough. She doesn't measure up, pun intended. And so she's trying to find her way, and her friends on the musical staff have to sort of show her that she is enough, just as she is. So that's what's coming up for me. And then I'll have 3 other books out in 2024 that I'm excited about. None of those will have anthropomorphic characters, but my first 3 yes, and my next 3 no. So
That's awesome.
so I'm really excited about that one. And I don't know a lot about music, so you don't have to just write what you know, because I started that book with just the title or the line, half note didn't feel whole. And I went from there learning what I didn't know about the musical notes and whatnot. So
I bet the
anyway,
illustrations are really fun for that one too, because they're in process right now, right?
they're now complete.
Oh, now
Mark
complete. Okay.
is the illustrator, and he did an awesome job.
Yeah, I bet
So
that's really fun.
yes, I'll have a cover reveal coming up next month. So but as for advice, well, first advice I would give is read as many picture books or whatever genre you're writing as you can. I wish I had done that. I had published some things prior to my first like Polar Bear Island, and I felt like I didn't know what I didn't know because I hadn't read enough. So I would read as much as you can. But then the other advice I would give is to have confidence and humility in equal measure. So believe in your ideas, believe that they're worthy and that you can do this. And at the same time, have an equal amount of humility that you're willing to receive critiques, you're willing to take advice about your work, and also to know when, which advice to apply. That's where the confidence and humility go hand in hand. So I think you need both in this field.
Very sage advice. Going around, Kate, how about you? What's next for you?
So my next book's coming out fall of 2023. I'm doing another book with Karina Lukin, and this one's called In the Dark. And there's no anthropomorphic animals in it, but it's sort of, I'll just say it's kind of about what happens when we're in the dark about other people. And there's literal darkness and kind of the assumptions we make, and group of townspeople and some newcomers. I'll leave you guys in the dark about the rest of it. So I'm excited about that. And I mean, I think that as far as advice goes, it's, if you're creating, if you're doing anything in a creative field, you just know that you're doing one of the most vulnerable things you can do in life. And sometimes we have to stop and I think remind ourselves of that, because it's so easy to get caught up in so many other little things. And that the fact that you keep getting up after a critique or after, and we just keep doing it, that there's something that is so beautiful about that. And sometimes you're going to do that without an audience. In fact, a lot of times we're going to do it without an audience. Like even this year, I had 2 manuscripts turned down, and I just endured that without an audience. Do you know what I mean? But then I just keep getting up and writing again. So I think just figuring out what it is that you're in love with your craft, and figuring out that the most important thing you can do is to cultivate that, because everything else you can only control to a certain degree. And then what Lindsay said, just read. And of course, if you love your craft, you're probably going to automatically be doing that. But it's okay. But just, just try to keep up to date and read what you think is helpful to you. That's what I tend to do. I gravitate towards the books that I think will speak to me as a writer. And it may not be all books, and that's okay.
Love it. Ryan, how about you? What's next for you?
Well, I don't have any other books in the works right now. I'm rather consumed with college. There are some other stories that I would like to bring to print if I have the opportunity to do that. And also just like being in game development provides its own opportunity for writing and creating stories. It's just a different medium. So that's where a lot of my writing efforts are going right now. And as far as like publishing advice, I mean, I'm obviously new to this. I haven't published anything other than this one book. But I guess what I would say is just it's important to recognize that a book or a story is not a thing that just appears. When you're on the receiving end of like when you just go and buy a book in the store, it looks like it just showed up out of nowhere. But there is this whole process behind it that are all familiar with, that if you're when you're going into the field, I know this is how I felt, is it just felt like things were moving so slowly. And if it didn't get picked up by one thing, it felt like it was never going to get picked up. So like, just be aware that something can sit on the shelf for 11 years and still come to publication and be this amazing story. So don't let something fade away into nothingness. Just stay behind your work and know that it can go somewhere if you really put in the effort to do that.
That's great advice. It reminds me, if people have seen publishing compared to an iceberg, the published book is the little tip at the top that you see, but there's so much, underneath that went into it. But yeah, and good luck with the video games too. Another great place for anthropomorphism. Definitely, I've loved those my whole life too. If you can be a mouse in a video game or a wolf or something, I'd rather do that than be a person running around. So and Rox, how about you?
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm blown away by everyone. I am so thankful for this wonderful Zoom call. I don't have any specific plans to publish in the near future. However, I would love for Paco, as he discovered going to the dentist, I would like him to also be able to teach kids about other medical, I'm an allergist, and I would like Paco to have asthma and allergies at our next book. I think kids need to know that, that they can relate to a character with a medical condition. So that's something that I would love to do, and but that's in the future. As far as what I would tell others, I honestly underestimated the cost as a self-publisher and the amount of work. Like I said before, I think it gave me a huge appreciation what everybody does to get the book out in the shelf. And I think that marketing is also a huge component to this. And it actually made me realize that, there's so many books, fantastic books that may be sitting in a shelf that perhaps didn't get the marketing that it needed to make it out there. So, I think it just encourages me to look at authors who are not very well known or who are, less published, and really encourage them and support them. I find that as I meet more authors, one thing that's amazing to me is how much support there is from one to another. And it's just really inspiring. So again, thank you. And I hope Paco has many more stories in the future, but more to come, I guess.
We hope so too.
Thank you.
And all right, so this came in while we were doing our wrap up here, and I have to ask it because it was so fun, but we'll do a rapid fire. So we've got if you could be an animal, what would you want to be? So just name a fun animal you think would be fun to be. We'll do rapid fire. So everyone can just jump in.
I don't know if it would be something that's fun to be, but I've been compared to a possum.
Oh.
Does that mean you're a night owl?
That too.
Yeah.
just more of a little gremlin.
It's funny. I think I'd love to be a bee or a bird. I'd love to fly. Yeah. Soar.
Giraffe and a pelican. Pelicans get the best of both worlds. They get to float and they get to soar.
That's awesome.
I would love to be a chameleon, just so I can blend in wherever I want to be. But I would also love to be a puppy, just free and run and chase a ball. How much fun would that be?
Yes. It's awesome. And Kate?
I think I immediately thought of a rabbit because when I wrote Rabbit in the Motorbike, like in many ways, I am rabbit. But then I guess that's me saying I would be an anthropomorphic rabbit. So does that count? I would want to be on the motorbike as well.
Good choice. Yes. Yep. So we're back to animals being on the two-wheeled vehicle. Oh, that's fun. And I will
That's the
actually
next
say,
game I make.
What?
That's the next game I make.
Yes.
There you go.
And I'll throw mine in there too. I would actually probably be ferret because that is actually what my work in progress book is about. So for a middle grade. So I think that would be tons of fun. Like I said, I had them and they're just little feisty, little thieving, little adorable things. So awesome. Well, thank you all for the fantastic questions in the Q&A. That was really fun. To wrap us up, a huge thank you again to our very talented panelists, Regina Bond, Lindsay Bonilla, Kate Hoefler, Ryan Huntley, and Rock Siles. Don't forget to grab copies of their books from the Book Loft of German Village at bookloft.com. And in case, again, you need an excuse to buy more books, although do you ever really need an excuse? So just an additional reminder that you can, or that a portion of every book festival sale goes to Ohioana to help support our library and programs, helping make events like tonight's panel and the annual book festival possible. Thank you also again to all of the Ohioana Book Festival sponsors and partners, and thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Remember to check out the Ohioana website for all of this year's festival programming and more fantastic panels on a huge variety of book genres and topics, all by Ohio authors and illustrators. So yeah, this has just been tons of fun tonight. Thank you so much and good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye,
thank
you
you.
guys. You guys are amazing.
night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.